is Monique Willems, and I run a program called the Wonder Mentorship, which is a subscription-based mentoring program for homeschool parents where I weekly walk them through different mindset shifts, homeschool, how to, educational strategies, and different things like that through a variety of video modules and activity prompts and different things like that. So today I wanted to share a little mini module on one of my favorite activities to do with kids and a way that we are able to tie several different subjects together into one activity that allows kids to showcase their learning and to expound on it and think through, some of the things that they're learning in a different and creative way. And that is through the use of writing comic strips. Now, what we like to do is base these comics on a comic that's already developed, because that allows the kids to kind of pull from a world that's already created when they're just starting out. And as they grow in their ability and they want to try creating their own worlds and things like that, then they've already had that experience and they can move on and do that. And if they want to do that right from the start, that's totally fine too. I'm just sharing what we do. But I love comics because you're combining art, illustration, writing, narrative, and different facts or history, science, health, anything like that, all into one. And part of my background is I was a public school ELA teacher for my career before I had kids and then started homeschooling. And I really was always hammering home to my students, I want you to show, not tell. I want you, when you're writing, to show me what you know, but don't explicitly tell me. So share about a tide pool without saying, this is a tide pool. A tide pool is X, Y, Z and contains these types of animals or plants or algae or bacteria. Okay, that's a very telling statement. But the cool thing with comics is it allows you to use a combination of narrative, words, and imagery to show what you know rather than just tell, which is just such a key skill for kids to have. So we are going to talk about using the narwhal and jelly books as our jumping off point. Now, I am obsessed with narwhals and I just love narwhal and jelly. Even my kids who are grade 5 and 7 still find these funny to read and entertaining. And as you can see, they're very simple drawings that most kids can replicate and feel like it looks like the actual book. So that's one of the reasons that we use these. Another one that I like to use is things by Mo Willems. Just a coincidence that our names are very similar, Monique Willems and Mo Willems. But Mo Willems has the Pigeon books, he has Elephant and Piggy, and those aren't comics per se, they're more like picture books, but again, very simple illustrations that have some funny, quirky characters, and we've done a lot with, creating comics with the Elephant and Piggy or the Pigeon character and things like that. So we're studying marine biology right now, so we're going to talk about using narwhal and jelly. So the first step in doing this activity with your kids is immersion. So you want to get these from the library, buy them, look them up online, do what you got to do. You want to read the comics with your kids. You want them to be, paying attention to the illustrations. You want them to be paying attention to the character traits in them, noticing kind of like the humor involved. Things like that, okay? They're going to be able to carry on those character traits. Like for instance, Jelly can kind of be a little bit of a nervous character. Narwhal is obsessed with waffles. So, throwback references to waffles is always going to go over well and things like that. So immersion, spend a bunch of time reading these and then you're going to move on to step 2. Step 2 is lay out a little bit of your challenge, your activity or your expectation with your kids. I like to call them challenges and activities rather than expectations with my kids. So in this challenge, when we did this activity, my expectation or my challenge to them was, again, I want you to take something that we've just learned about within the last 2 weeks of studying marine biology, and I want you to show your knowledge of it in a comic strip featuring Narwhal and Jelly. And at the beginning, they may look at you with blank stares, and you're like, well, I don't know, because lots of times we really skip over, or we, require this like kind of pre-writing phase, but they're kind of left to their own devices. And I think that this is one of the areas in the writing process that actually needs the most collaboration, or it needs like a healthy dose of collaboration between you and your child, or between teacher and child. So this is how we do this step in terms of like kind of priming the pump, activating their prior knowledge, trying to get them, thinking through some of the ideas, and then how do those things that they've learned translate into being able to make a storyline out of them. So this is what we do. We sit down and we discuss. We maybe pull out some of the books that we've been reading. We reference some of the documentaries or YouTube videos that we've watched. And so we'll just talk about something. I'm going to scribe. I'm going to be the secretary. I'm going to write down our ideas and kind of organize them a little bit, especially when you just start doing this. As you progress, your kids can do some of that scribing themselves, or that, jotting those notes down. So, for example, one of the things we talked about is, okay, we know that coral are commonly mistaken by plants. We were one of those people who were like, oh, they just kind of look like plants. But coral are actually animals. So one of us might bring that up, and then I ask, okay, how would this look in a comic with Narwhal and Jelly? Okay, well, somebody suggested Narwhal might be trying to make a salad, and then the coral starts talking to him. Oh yeah, that's a great idea. That would be a really cute little comic strip. Okay, we've been talking about intertidal zones and the pelagic zones. Am I saying that right? I'm not sure. So we have learned about tide pools. And so then I ask, okay, well, what would that look like in a storyline? What might happen with a tide pool? Well, high tide comes in and the low tide brings it out, and then animals get stuck in these tide pools. Well, who would get stuck in a tide pool? Well, not Narwhal, he's too big and he probably wouldn't be that close to shore, but Jelly could get stuck in the tide pool. Oh yeah, that's a great idea. Well, who might they meet in a tide pool? Okay, well, it's not going to be a humpback whale, right? Who might they meet? It's not going to be an anglerfish. Well, they might meet a starfish, they might meet a crab, they might meet any of the host of tide pool animals, okay? So then we talk about, what might happen in that situation, and we just get those ideas flowing for the comic. Another area of the ocean we've kind of studied is like those deeper zones where there's no sunlight and there's intense pressure, and what types of fish and bacteria live down there. Okay, so then we kind of talk through what are some of the characteristics of that zone. Well, there's intense pressure. Jelly could be afraid of the dark because there's no sunlight, so it's really dark down there. What are some of the marine life that they would meet down there? Blobfish, anglerfish. Okay, so then we kind of ran off that. Well, what would it be like for Narwhal and Jelly to meet an anglerfish? Well, it's really dark, but they'd probably start like poking at the little light bioluminescent dangly thing that an anglerfish has that attracts its prey. Okay, well, they might start tapping that, and then they might also be like, oh my gosh, there's a fish attached to this. They might make friends with a blobfish, and when the blobfish comes up to their zone to visit, it might just completely go bleh, because that's what blobfishes do when they don't have the intense pressure. Different things like that. So as you can see, we just talk through what we've learned, and then we just explore together what it would look like to include that in a storyline. The third step is pick the storyline that you want to run with. So maybe it's something you talked about, maybe it prompted them to think of something else, and then you're going to allow them to go with that. I always like to print off comic templates, and I tell them, you know what, for your first draft, if this is, not all writing has to go to publishing, but for us in this activity, it is going to publishing. So we're going to do, kind of our rough draft. We're going to work with it. We're going to collaborate on it. And then we're going to do a good copy of it. So I print off these different comic book templates, and that way they can just use them to fill them in. And they're just drawing pretty low detail right now, something that they just is going to at least allow them to play around with the positioning in the frame, to look at their facial expressions of the characters and things like that, and then they're writing in their text and their story. Then when you get to step 4, which would be publishing, if you go that far, so you could just redo this in a good copy. You could fix this up if they did a pretty good job the first time, just, you know, maybe go through and, you know, outline with pen and color in, maybe you're using watercolors, things like that. I go through the collaboration where we just think, oh, like that's a really great idea. Can we use the word tide pool somewhere? So, you know, maybe the crab mentions that he's, you know, stuck in the tide pool. We talk about some of the graphic elements. We're actually going to publish these in Procreate, which is an illustrating program that you can have on the iPad that allows you to use the Apple Pencil. So they're going to illustrate that in there. That will allow them to like copy and paste different backgrounds that they use. It'll allow them to like copy and paste characters and then just change minor things. So it'll just kind of like speed up that process, and is also what a lot of illustrators of comics books use. So then we just have that added element of being able to explore this different medium and this different way to write and publish your work. So there you have it. I love using these comic activities as just a fun and creative way for kids to showcase, synthesize their learning in a different way. It's engaging, it's motivating, there's humor, they love to share them. It's achievable in that we're using comics where the illustration isn't overwhelming or super detailed. And so this is something that whether you're creating your own lesson plans, whether you're working, you know, doing things from scratch and you're being interest-led, you can work this in. If you're using a curriculum, you can absolutely work this in as well. Just take the things that you're learning and you're working on and add this as an additional activity to synthesize a lot of that knowledge. So I hope you find this helpful. If you are interested in more of these types of modules, this is what we do in the Wonder Mentorship. Every Wednesday morning, all the members get a 20 to 25 minute module on different educational strategies and homeschool how-tos like reporting, mindset shifts, how to like navigate transitions and reset your homeschool day. So if you're interested, follow the link and we'd love to have you.